The glass in her doorway caught the edge of my reflection before I even stepped inside, and that was when Megan's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You actually wore that?" The word struck before I could brace myself, sharp enough to make my shoulders draw in. Tyler was leaning back on the couch, pretending to scroll, but his eyes flicked toward my chest for half a second too long. That glance hit harder than her voice. I kept standing there, clutching the folded towel I'd brought, feeling the heat rise beneath my skin. The house smelled like citrus cleaner and something sweet she'd baked earlier. It should have felt familiar. It didn't. I walked farther in, my steps slow, careful. The way you move when you're suddenly aware of being watched. She didn't move aside to let me pass. She just stared at the bikini strap peeking through my shirt. I said I loved her birthday gift. My voice came out flat, almost quiet, but steady enough to hold my ground. Tyler shifted in his seat. The fabric creaked under him, a small sound that somehow made everything tighter. Megan crossed her arms, nails tapping against her skin like she was keeping time with her annoyance. I tried to smile. It didn't reach anywhere. She kept looking at me as if I'd stepped into her house wearing something meant to provoke, not something she bought with her own hands. The room felt smaller by the second, as if the air itself had turned into a warning. The night hadn't even begun, and already something was cracking beneath the surface. Jenna's voice from earlier kept replaying in my mind as I followed Megan toward the back door. "Girl, that thing is see-through." The way she said it, soft, hesitant, like she didn't want to embarrass me, felt so different from the cold edge coming off Megan now. I stepped onto the patio, and the damp evening air clung to my skin. The hot tub lights glowed pale blue, rippling against the fence. Tyler was already walking toward it, carrying 2 drinks, pretending not to look at me, but failing miserably. Megan disappeared inside for more towels, her footsteps sharp against the hardwood. The sliding door clicked shut behind her. I heard Tyler exhale, a slow sound, and I sank down onto the bench near the tub to keep some distance. The fabric under me was cool, almost slick. He stood a little too close, and the silence between us made the yard feel exposed. "You, really like that swimsuit?" he asked without looking up. I kept my hands folded in my lap, pretending not to hear the way his voice dipped. "It was a gift," I said. "People use what they're given." My words made him shift, but he didn't step back. Inside, a cupboard slammed. Not loud enough to be anger, but loud enough to mean something. I stared at the water, the steam rising in soft curls. Something in my chest tightened, a mix of dread and something more tired than afraid. I hadn't come here to start anything, but something had already started without me, and the weight of it pressed into the quiet. I wasn't sure Megan wanted towels. I was starting to wonder if she just wanted a moment to imagine the worst. The water rippled as I lowered myself into the hot tub, the heat wrapping around my legs before I fully settled. Tyler was already in, shoulders resting back, eyes fixed on the bubbling surface. Or that's where they should have been. Instead, the moment I eased in, his gaze lifted and landed exactly where I knew it would. Quick, then lingering, then pretending to look away as if the damage hadn't already been done. A soft tap echoed from somewhere inside the house, a cabinet, a bottle on the counter. It didn't matter. Every sound felt amplified. I tried to make small talk something light about work, the weather, anything that kept the air from thickening more than it already had. He answered in short, uneven sentences. His stare kept drifting. Each time I pretended not to notice. Pretending was easier than acknowledging the truth stitched into this moment. Steam curled around us like a veil, but nothing could hide the shift in his breathing. I folded my arms across my middle. An instinctive barrier, even as the water continued its quiet bubbling around us. A passing car hummed in the distance, its headlights sweeping briefly across the fence, casting a flash of white over his face. He looked away then, finally, jaw tightening like he was trying to remember he wasn't alone. The sliding door rumbled, then opened. Megan stood framed in the doorway, holding a tray with 2 drinks. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Her eyes locked onto me in the water, and I saw every realization bloom across her face. Recognition, shock, something close to horror, then something colder. Her fingers tightened around the glasses, one tilted, spilling a thin stream of liquid down her wrist. She didn't wipe it. I stayed still in the water, the heat rising toward my chin, a strange mixture of exposed and eerily calm. She stepped forward, slow, each footfall sounding heavier than the last. She didn't blink, and just like that, the night shifted. Megan set the tray down harder than she meant to. The glass rattled against the wood, a sharp little jolt that broke the hum of the jets. She stood there for a moment, shoulders stiff, eyes glued to the waterline where my chest barely stayed hidden under the ripples. Her throat moved once, a quick swallow she didn't disguise. Then she slid into the hot tub, slow and deliberate, as if every inch closer to me confirmed something she'd been trying not to believe. The water lifted around her as she settled beside Tyler. He shifted an inch away, not a full step, just enough to register as guilt. She noticed. Of course she did. A muscle jumped in her jaw, a small twitch that carried more weight than any spoken argument. "So, that's the swimsuit I bought you," she said, her voice light but stretched too thin to hold. "It is," I answered. "I wear it everywhere." Tyler's fingers tightened on the rim of the tub. The steam seemed to pull tighter around us, thick and unmoving. Megan's stare stayed on me, but not on my face, on the fabric clinging to my skin. The color in her cheeks wasn't from the heat. "I wore it to the beach last week," I added softly. "Lots of people there. Good weather, busy crowd." Her breath hitched, barely audible. A quiet, almost wounded sound. She didn't look at Tyler, but her body leaned just slightly toward him, as if proximity could erase what she'd just walked in on. The silence stretched, bending under its own weight. She tried to smile. Failed. Something in her eyes changed. A small fracture, then a deeper one. The night wasn't cracking anymore. It had split clean through. Megan climbed out first. No warning, no word. Just the sharp push of water as she stood, grabbed her towel and walked toward the house with a pace too quick to be casual. The door slid shut behind her with a dull thud. Tyler muttered something under his breath, something that sounded like, "She's overthinking." But he didn't follow her. He stayed right there, elbows on his knees, staring at the water as if the bubbles could cover the choice he'd just made. I waited a moment, letting the air settle, then stepped out too. The chill hit my skin fast, sharper than the night breeze should have been. The damp towel clung to me awkwardly as I wrapped it around my middle and headed inside. The hallway light flickered once, casting a thin shadow along the floor. I followed it toward her bathroom to change, my footsteps soft on the tile. When I opened the door, she was already there. She stood in front of the mirror, towel around her shoulders, eyes red at the edges. She didn't look at me through the reflection. She looked down, fingers gripping the counter until her knuckles whitened. A bottle of lotion sat tipped on its side like she'd knocked it over without noticing. "I thought you'd figure it out," she whispered. "It was a joke." I didn't say anything. The fabric of my swimsuit clung to me, cold now, unmistakable. She glanced up. This time, she didn't hide the sting. "You knew," she said, "and you still went out there. With him." Her voice cracked on that last word, thin as paper. "And now I'm supposed to believe you didn't do it on purpose?" The steam from the shower drifted upward behind her, soft and hazy, but nothing about her voice felt soft. It felt like a line had finally been crossed. I pulled the door halfway closed behind me, just enough to soften the noise from the hallway. Megan stayed angled toward the mirror, shoulders trembling in tiny, uneven motions she kept trying to steady. The bathroom light buzzed faintly above us, a thin, nervous sound that filled the gaps between her breaths. "I didn't buy it for you to actually wear," she said, wiping at the corner of her eye with the side of her hand. "It was supposed to be funny, just funny, Her reflection met mine. The redness was clearer now, blooming across her cheeks like heat she couldn't hold back. She stared at the swimsuit clinging to me and looked away fast, jaw tightening. "You should have noticed," she said. "Anyone would have noticed." I set my folded clothes on the counter. The fabric made a soft thud, so ordinary it felt out of place between us. "Jenna noticed," I said quietly. "At the pool." That name sent a flicker through her expression, an insecurity she didn't mask quickly enough. "So you knew," she whispered. "You knew exactly what it would look like, and you sat out there with him like it didn't matter." I slipped one strap off my shoulder, slow, careful, keeping my tone level. "I wore the gift you gave me, that's all." She turned toward me then, not fully, just enough that I could see the hurt building into something sharper. "He couldn't stop staring," she said. "I saw it the second I walked out." Her voice cracked again. "And you just sat there, like you didn't feel his eyes on you." The air thickened, heavy, close. The kind of heaviness that doesn't come from anger alone, but from the fear underneath it. Fear she didn't want me to see. A drop of water slid from my hair and landed on the tile between us. The sound was barely audible, but it echoed anyway. "You made me look like a fool," she whispered. And that was the moment something inside her turned from embarrassed to betrayed. I reached for my shirt, but she stepped forward before I could lift it. Not close enough to touch me, just close enough that her presence pushed into my space. The towel around her shoulders slipped a little, exposing the tense line of her collarbone. She didn't fix it. "You know what he's like," she said. "You've known since the night we all met. He looks at anything that moves, and you still—" Her voice thinned. "You still sat there." The accusation hung between us, raw and trembling. "I didn't go out there for him," I said. "I went because you asked me to hang out, because you invited me." She laughed under her breath. Not a real laugh, a broken little burst that collapsed as soon as it left her mouth. "Don't pretend you didn't hear the way he talked. Don't pretend you didn't see how he looked at you." Her fingers dug into the edge of the counter again. The tendons in her wrist stood out, tight and strained. A bottle of face cream tipped over when her hand shifted, rolling until it hit my hip with a soft tap. Neither of us reached to pick it up. "I trusted you," she said, softer now. "And you sat in that water wearing something I bought as a joke. Do you know how that makes me look?" The question wasn't meant to be answered. It came from someplace deeper, someplace older than tonight. Something inside her had been waiting for a moment like this to crack open. "Megan," I said, keeping my voice low, steady, trying not to feed the growing flame in her eyes. "If you didn't want me to wear it, you could have said something. You could have told me." She shook her head. "I shouldn't have had to." Her reflection trembled in the mirror, a slight distortion from the rising steam. She wiped her cheek with the heel of her palm, rougher than she meant to. "You walked in there like you didn't care what people saw," she whispered. "Like you didn't care what I saw." The room fell quiet, a quiet so sharp it carved itself into my ribs. Somewhere in the house, Tyler called her name, once, then again, louder. She didn't answer. She just kept staring at me, eyes bright, jaw set, waiting for something she couldn't ask for out loud. And in that silence, it became clear. This wasn't about the bikini. It was about what she feared it revealed. Tyler's footsteps thudded down the hallway, uneven and impatient. The sound drew closer, then stopped just outside the bathroom door. A faint knock followed, barely a tap, like he wasn't sure whether he wanted to interrupt or hide behind the thin strip of wood. "Megan, you good?" His voice carried that uneasy mix of guilt and defensiveness. The kind men use when they know they've been caught looking too long at something they shouldn't. She didn't respond, not a word, not even a breath in his direction. Her silence sharpened the air. He hesitated, then tried again. "Look, I didn't mean—" "Go downstairs," she said. Quiet, steady, a command wrapped in exhaustion. He lingered a beat too long, then the floor creaked under his retreating steps. A door opened somewhere, then shut. The house settled again. Megan let go of the counter. Her hands dropped to her sides, fingers curling into loose fists. She took a breath that didn't seem to reach her lungs. "I shouldn't have brought you here tonight," she murmured. I don't know what I thought." I watched her in the mirror, the way her shoulders dipped, the way her eyes softened, only for a moment, before tightening again. She wasn't angry at me. She wasn't angry at him. She was angry at the proof neither of us had to say out loud. "You wore it on purpose," she said, "because you knew what it would do." I stepped back, letting the distance widen. "I wore it because it was my birthday gift, because you gave it to me, because I didn't think you'd hand me something meant to embarrass me." Her mouth opened, then closed. A flash of guilt crossed her expression, quick and unguarded. It vanished almost instantly. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered. "It was just supposed to be funny, a stupid joke." Another drop of water slid from my hair and hit the tile. She looked down at it as if that small sound snapped something fragile inside her. "You don't get it," she said. "You walk into a room and men notice. I walk in and I'm background noise." It was the first honest thing she'd said all night. She blinked hard, as if she regretted letting it slip. The steam swirled upward, softening the harsh edges of the mirror's reflection. But nothing softened the truth sitting between us. This wasn't a fight about a joke bikini. This was a fight about every insecurity she'd been swallowing down for years. And tonight, I had become the easiest place for it to land. She sank down onto the closed toilet lid, elbows on her knees, palms pressed against her eyes like she was trying to hold the whole night together with just her fingers. The towel around her shoulders slipped again, but she didn't bother pulling it up. The steam in the room made the air thick, almost heavy enough to taste. I leaned against the sink, the porcelain cool against my back, and waited for her to breathe through whatever storm she'd let loose. "I hate feeling like this," she said finally. Her voice was thin, almost frayed. "Like I'm 12 again, like I'm standing next to someone everyone notices, and I'm invisible." I didn't answer. Anything I said would have sounded like pity, and that would have cut deeper than silence. She sniffed once, sharp, then looked up at me with an expression that held both resentment and something close to longing. "Do you even know what it's like?" she whispered. "To be the one who gets looked past? Not because you're a bad person, but because you're not that?" Her eyes flicked toward my chest again. Her cheeks flushed. She looked away fast. "I didn't realize it mattered that much," I said softly. "It shouldn't." She let out a bitter, breathy laugh. "But it does." She stood slowly, wiping her palms down the sides of her legs. "When I bought that bikini, it was supposed to be stupid, just something we'd laugh about. You'd hold it up, call me crazy, and that would be it." Her jaw tightened. "But then you wore it. Out, in public." She swallowed. Around him. The way she said him scraped something raw inside the room. I lifted my shirt, starting to pull it over my shoulders. She watched for a moment, then turned her head slightly, pretending to give me privacy but not fully looking away. "I'm not your enemy," I said. She closed her eyes. "Sometimes the people who can hurt you most aren't trying to." Her voice shook. "They just don't realize where the bruise already is." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped aside, giving me space to reach the mirror. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't understanding. It was just space. I took it. But when I caught her reflection behind me, the hurt was still there, quiet, sharp, and nowhere near resolved, and the night wasn't done unraveling. Tyler's voice drifted up from downstairs, faint but unmistakably irritated. A drawer slammed, another, then silence. The kind of silence that carries more tension than noise ever could. Megan didn't move. She stood there with her arms folded tight across her stomach, like she was bracing for impact she didn't want witnessed. I finished pulling on my shirt. The cotton clung damp against my back. When I reached for my bag, her eyes flicked toward it, then toward the hall, like she was trying to decide which version of herself she wanted to be when we stepped out of this room. "You're leaving?" she asked, not angry, just hollow. "I think it's better," I said. She nodded once, but her lips pressed together, a small collapsing motion that betrayed more than any outburst could. She brushed past me, the towel slipping off entirely and landing on the tile with a soft, heavy thud. She didn't stop to pick it up. Her bare shoulders looked so much smaller from behind, almost fragile under the bathroom light. We walked into the hall. The floor creaked beneath her steps as she made her way toward the stairs. Halfway down, Tyler appeared at the bottom, arms crossed, jaw tight. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. "You done?" he asked, voice low. Megan froze on the step above him, her fingers curled around the banister, knuckles paling. "Tyler," she warned. He didn't look away. "It's not her fault." His tone had that defensive edge again, like he was choosing sides without realizing he'd said it out loud. A subtle, wounded sound left her throat. I stepped forward, trying to defuse the weight between them. "This isn't about him," I said. "It's not even about me. It is about you," Megan whispered, barely audible. The three of us stood suspended on the staircase, her above him, me between them, like some cruel triangle none of us agreed to draw. "Don't make this something it isn't," Tyler muttered. She turned toward him, face softening in a heartbreaking way. "Then tell me what it is." He didn't answer. Not a word. The silence was the kind that doesn't fade. It sinks. It settles. It tells the truth no one wants to say out loud. Megan's eyes glassed again, not from rage this time, but from understanding. And something in the house shifted. Subtle. Devastating. Irreversible. I took another step down the stairs and the floor groaned beneath me, a small sound that pulled both of their eyes in my direction. Their reactions said everything. Megan looked shattered. Tyler looked guilty. And I just wanted to leave before the night swallowed any of us whole. Tyler stepped back as I reached the bottom of the stairs, but it wasn't out of respect. It was the kind of step people take when they don't want to be caught in the middle of two truths colliding. His eyes darted to the side, then down, then back to me. Quick little flickers that said he knew exactly how this looked, and he didn't have the spine to clean it up. Megan stayed on the step above us. She held the railing like she needed it to stay upright. Her breathing was uneven, almost silent, but her shoulders shook in tiny pulses. I could feel her staring at the back of his head, willing him to say something, anything, that would make this moment less humiliating. "Caroline," she said softly, "don't go yet." I turned. Her face wasn't angry now. It was something worse, something stripped bare. Tyler shifted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I think everyone's overreacting," he muttered. The room tightened around that sentence, not because it was harsh, but because it was cowardly. She looked at him like she didn't recognize him. "That's what you have to say? After everything?" He lifted a shoulder. "Nothing happened." "That's not the point," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her spine straightened a little. A quiet realignment, like she just realized she was standing on ground she didn't want to defend anymore. I stepped toward the front door. My shoes were already there, placed neatly beside a pair of hers. One of the shoelaces had come undone, trailing on the mat like something forgotten. "Caroline," she said again, walking down the last step. "Please, wait." I paused with my hand on the knob. She stopped behind me, close enough that I could feel her breath catch, but not close enough to touch. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not for the bikini, for all of this, for making you the target of something I should have faced on my own." Tyler scoffed, a short, defensive exhale he tried to hide. She turned to him, and for the first time all night, Her voice didn't shake. "Do you know how it feels," she asked, "to watch someone you care about light up for someone else?" He froze. That silence was louder than any answer. She blinked hard, making her lashes stick together. "I'm not angry because she wore it," she said. "I'm angry because you couldn't look away." He opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw twitched. I slipped into my shoes quietly. The air thinned again. Not with tension this time, but with inevitability. Megan wiped the corner of her eye with her thumb. "I shouldn't have put you in that position," she said to me. "I was hurt. I reacted wrong. But it wasn't your fault." I nodded once. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. A shared truth between women who knew this kind of bruise. I reached for the door again. Behind me, Tyler's voice finally broke the silence. "You're blowing this out of proportion." Megan inhaled sharply, a soft, wounded breath that told me this fight wasn't mine to finish, but the damage had been done long before tonight. I stepped outside, the cool night air brushing over my skin like a release. Inside, the doorframe vibrated with the force of a single muffled sentence. "Then maybe you should go look at her instead." And the night closed behind me. The porch light cast a faint halo over the steps as I walked down, my damp clothes cooling fast against the night air. I paused at the end of the walkway, not because I wanted to stay, but because the silence behind her door felt too heavy to turn my back on immediately. A sharp thud reached me, something hitting a wall, or maybe just someone's hand meeting it harder than they meant to. Then muffled voices, overlapping, fractured. I didn't want to listen, but the night didn't give me a choice. "You made a fool of yourself," Tyler snapped, his voice clearer now that the argument had climbed above restraint. "No," Megan said, steadier than before. "You did." A beat of silence. Then his pacing footsteps moved across the entryway floor, the boards creaking under his weight. "You think I was staring?" he said. "You're imagining things." The lie was so thin I felt it from outside. "I saw your face," she answered. "You weren't even trying to hide it." My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. I took another step down the path, but their voices held me in place. Not because I wanted to hear them, because something about the rawness carried a truth neither of them had faced until tonight. "You always do this," he said. "Twist everything into some insecurity drama." The cruelty in that line wasn't loud. That made it hit harder. A soft sound followed, her breath catching, barely audible. Then, "You think it's a game? Watching me fall apart and calling it drama?" More footsteps. A door hinge squeaked. The kitchen, maybe. "Don't act like you're perfect," he said. "I never said I was," she answered. "But I didn't look at anyone the way you looked at her." Another pause. Heavy. Suffocating. Then, in a voice so small I barely recognized it as hers, "If you wanted someone like her, you didn't have to pick me." My eyes closed. The hurt in that sentence could have cracked concrete. A few seconds passed before Tyler spoke again, quieter, lower, the kind of voice meant to end an argument instead of fix it. "I'm going to bed." His footsteps retreated. A door closed upstairs, not slammed, just shut with the careless finality of someone ending a conversation for themselves, alone. The house fell quiet. Then the front door opened behind me. Megan stepped out, arms wrapped around her own body, not for warmth, but to hold herself together. Her eyes were swollen, but there was something clearer in them now, an exhaustion that had shed its shame. "I didn't mean for you to hear all that," she said. I turned to face her. "You didn't deserve any of it." She looked down at the porch's wooden boards, toes curling slightly over the edge. "I'm so tired," she whispered, "of pretending I'm fine, of pretending I don't see what I see." A breeze moved between us, lifting the loose strands of her hair. "I didn't come here to hurt you," I said. "You know that." She nodded. "I do now." The porch light hummed faintly above us. The street was quiet, washed in soft yellow glow. She took a small step closer, stopping a foot away, as if crossing that last inch might break her. "I'm sorry for the bikini," she said. "For the joke, for all of it." "I know," I said. She let out a long, trembling breath. "I don't think things will ever be the same after tonight." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," I answered. Her eyes lifted to mine, filled with a grief deeper than anger. "No," she whispered. "Maybe it isn't." A car passed slowly at the end of the street, headlights sweeping briefly across the grass before fading. She looked toward her doorway where the argument still lingered in the air like smoke. "You should head home," she said. "It's late." I hesitated. "Will you be okay?" I asked. She nodded. Once, small, but real. "I will. Just not tonight." I stepped back onto the walkway. She stayed there on the porch, arms still wrapped around herself, watching me go. Neither of us said goodbye. Some endings don't need the word. The street was quiet as I walked, the kind of quiet that makes every sound stand out. The click of my shoes against the pavement, the faint rustle of leaves shifting in the dark, the slow exhale I didn't realize I'd been holding since the bathroom. The night air cooled the last traces of steam clinging to my skin. Each step put a little more distance between me and the house I'd just left, but not enough to shake the feeling of something unfinished clinging to the back of my ribs. Halfway down the block, I stopped under a street lamp. Its light pooled in a soft circle around me, warm and still. I set my bag down on the curb and crouched beside it, closing my eyes for a moment. The silence pressed gently, like a hand on my shoulder asking if I was ready to feel what I'd been holding back. It wasn't anger sitting under my skin. It was the ache of watching someone break in front of me and knowing I had been the mirror she shattered against. A car door slammed in the distance. A dog barked twice. Life moved on in small ways, even when people didn't. I pulled out my phone and checked the messages from Jenna, 2 missed texts from earlier, both simple, both grounding. "You good?" Followed by, "Call me if you need a ride." I typed back that I was fine, then deleted the word fine, then wrote, "I'm coming home instead." By the time I reached the next intersection, my clothes had dried enough that the chill stopped cutting through me. The world felt steadier. The sky above was clear, a wide, quiet stretch untouched by everything happening below it. I didn't look back. Some nights aren't meant to be rewound. Some nights change the shape of the ground you walk on. And tonight, all I could do was keep walking forward, letting the weight settle where it needed to, letting the truth of what happened breathe in the open air. Jenna was still awake when I got home. The living room lamp cast a soft glow across the couch, and she sat curled under a blanket with her hair pulled up, a half-finished mug of tea on the table. The moment the door clicked behind me, she looked up, really looked, her eyes searching my face before I even set my keys down. "What happened?" she asked, shifting upright. Not prying, just concerned in that quiet, instinctive way she had. I sank onto the opposite end of the couch. The cushion dipped beneath me, a gentle kind of grounding. "It got messy," I said. "More than I expected." She waited, not pushing. That patience alone was enough to loosen something tight in my throat. She wasn't angry about the swimsuit, I continued. Not really. It was everything under it. Everything she didn't want to admit. Jenna's expression softened. "I figured it might be that." I let out a breath, long and tired. She thought I wore it to get attention. From him, of all people. The bitterness surprised me. I didn't mean for it to slip out. Jenna shook her head. "He stared at you because he's disrespectful. That's on him, not you." The weight of that truth settled between us. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling, tracing the faint shadow of the light fixture. "She said she feels invisible next to me." Jenna's voice was gentle. "That's her wound, not your doing." I rubbed my hands together, trying to warm them. "I know," but I walked out feeling like I was carrying pieces of both of them. She reached over and placed a hand on my sleeve, not grabbing, just resting. You don't have to hold what isn't yours. The simple warmth of her touch pulled me back into my own body, steadier than the walk home had managed. I told her everything then, not in dramatic detail, just the truth as it unfolded. The hot tub, the look on his face, the way Megan cracked in layers, each one sharper than the last. Jenna listened without interrupting, her jaw tightening in quiet protectiveness at all the right moments. When I finished, she exhaled. That friendship is going to look different now. I know, I said. Does that scare you? I paused. A little. The clock on the wall ticked once, a clean, small sound that settled the air. But maybe, I added, it's time it did. Jenna nodded, then pulled the blanket open just enough for me to tuck my legs under it beside her, a gesture so natural it didn't need words. The house felt safe again, warm, predictable, and somewhere in town, under a different roof. Another woman was facing the truth of her own reflection without anyone to steady her. I didn't wish her pain, but I couldn't carry it for her anymore. I couldn't sleep that night. Even after Jenna went to bed and the apartment settled into its usual quiet, the echo of Megan's voice kept drifting back, soft in some places, sharp in others. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the faint hum of the refrigerator carrying through the wall like a steady, distant heartbeat. Eventually, I gave up on trying to rest and went to the kitchen, letting the cool tile press against my feet. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter, the surface cool through my sleeve. The house felt different at this hour, still, honest, the kind of stillness that doesn't hide anything. My mind replayed the look on Megan's face when she stepped onto the porch, that mixture of shame and clarity clinging to her like second skin. I didn't want to resent her. I didn't. Beneath everything, I understood her more than she knew. The fear of being overlooked, the sting of being compared to someone else without anyone ever saying it out loud, the ache of loving someone who doesn't love you in the same shape. Those wounds don't belong to one person. They're old echoes most women learn too young. I set the glass down. It clicked against the counter, a soft, grounding sound. My phone buzzed once. A message. Megan's name on the screen surprised me. I hesitated before opening it, a brief pause in case the words inside carried more weight than I was ready for. I'm sorry. Just those two. Nothing more. I stared at the message for a long moment. No justifications, no explanations, no spiraling, just a simple acknowledgement of hurt she couldn't undo, but finally saw clearly. I typed back, I know. Rest tonight. No promises. No blame. Just space for both of us. Outside, a distant siren wailed once and faded. A car passed under the streetlight, its headlights brushing across the window in a brief arc of pale gold. I walked back to the couch, pulled a blanket over my shoulders, and let the quiet settle around me again. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Maybe a conversation, maybe distance, maybe the slow process of untangling years of friendship from one night of rupture. Whatever came next, I wasn't carrying the shame of her wounds anymore. I rested my head against the cushion, letting the last of the night finally soften. Some truths arrive uninvited. Some nights leave you changed. And some moments, quiet, fragile, unspoken, become the place you start over from. Morning made everything look gentler than it felt. Sunlight pooled across the kitchen floor in wide, warm patches, brushing against the table legs and climbing the walls in slow, steady climbs. I stood there with a mug of coffee cupped in both hands, letting the heat settle the places the night had left raw. Jenna moved quietly behind me, gathering her keys, giving me space without making a show of it. "You going to be okay today?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." She didn't push further. The door clicked shut behind her, and the apartment fell into that soft morning stillness that feels more like a pause than a beginning. A message appeared on my phone as I rinsed my mug. Megan again. "Can we talk later? Only if you want to." I dried my hands on a towel and stared at the words. There wasn't urgency in them this time. No panic, no sharp edges, just a quiet request from someone finally seeing the shape of her own reflection. I typed back, "Not today, but soon." She responded almost immediately. "Okay, I understand." I slipped my phone into my pocket and stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the cool air. The street below was waking up slowly. Dog walkers, a delivery truck rumbling past, someone sweeping their porch. Normal things, simple things. The kind of things that remind you life doesn't pause just because your heart feels caught between two truths. I thought about the friendship Megan and I had built. Years of inside jokes, shared rides, late-night confessions, birthdays and breakups, and all the in-between moments that make someone feel like home even when they're not perfect. I also thought about last night. The cracks that widened too quickly, the insecurities that flew out like sparks, the quiet admission that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the bruises she carried long before she handed me that bikini. Relationships don't break in one night, but sometimes one night reveals every fault line at once. I leaned on the railing, letting the morning breeze cool my face. Maybe we'd repair things one day, maybe we wouldn't. But for the first time, I felt a strange kind of calm about either outcome. I didn't owe my peace to anyone else's comfort. Not hers. Not his. Not the version of me she projected her fears onto. There are moments when you realize you can love a person, care for them, and still step back from the places they hurt you, intentionally or not. Last night wasn't about blame. It was about recognition. And now that the truth had surfaced, I didn't need to carry the weight of proving innocence or absorbing guilt that wasn't mine. I closed my eyes, letting the light warm my skin. Not every ending is sudden. Sometimes it's just a shift in direction. Quiet, steady, unmistakable. And sometimes the softest distance is the one that finally lets you breathe. That afternoon, I found myself standing in front of my closet, fingers brushing over the hanger where the bikini lay folded in a small cloth bag. I hadn't planned on touching it again so soon, but there it was, unmistakable. The fabric thin enough that even in shadow it hinted at the joke stitched into its threads. I pulled the bag down and set it on my bed. The room swelled with a kind of stillness that felt almost ceremonial, like I was preparing to lay something to rest, not the swimsuit itself, but everything that had tangled around it. I opened the bag, smoothing the fabric between my hands. It was soft, deceptively delicate, the kind of thing that could tear if handled without care. For a long moment, I just stood there, the fabric catching the afternoon light. It wasn't the swimsuit's fault. It didn't choose the humiliation tied to it. It didn't choose the insecurity it pulled loose from someone else's chest. It was just an object, silent and simple, until someone used it to speak a truth they didn't have the courage to say plainly. I folded it once more, gentler than I expected, and placed it into a drawer, not hidden, not displayed. Just put away. A chapter closed without ceremony. My phone buzzed again. Jenna this time. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge. Please eat something." A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I texted back, "Thanks, I will." I grabbed the container from the fridge, reheated it, and sat on the couch with a blanket draped over my legs. Somewhere between bites, the weight of the last 24 hours finally began to ease. Not disappear, just shift into something more manageable. As I ate, I thought about Megan's porch, the tremble in her voice, the bruise beneath her words. And then I let the thought pass, not with resentment, not with longing, but with acceptance. You can care for someone without carrying their storm. When the sun slipped lower and the room warmed in golden light, I set the empty bowl aside and let myself relax into the cushions. A breeze drifted through the cracked window, stirring the curtains in slow, soft movements. It felt like the house itself was exhaling with me. I closed my eyes for a moment and let the quiet settle. Not all wounds come from cruelty. Some come from reflection, two people standing too close to each other's truth without meaning to. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is step back before the reflection becomes a weapon. I wrapped the blanket a little tighter around myself, the softness grounding me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't carrying anything that didn't belong to me. The night had taken enough. The rest was mine to keep. The sun had slipped behind the buildings when I finally stepped outside again, the evening settling into that quiet blue hour where everything softens. I walked slowly, following a route I'd taken 100 times, letting the familiar sidewalk steady my mind. The cool air brushed against my arms, grounding me more than any conversation could. Halfway down the block, I passed a small park. The swings moved gently in the breeze, empty but still shifting like someone had just stepped off. I sat on a nearby bench, feeling the cool metal through my jeans, and watched the street lamps flicker on one by one. A group of teenagers laughed somewhere across the field, their voices drifting in and out like distant radio static. Normal life, easy life. A reminder that last night was not the center of the universe, no matter how heavy it had felt. I leaned back, letting my shoulders rest against the seat. It wasn't the betrayal that stuck with me. It was the vulnerability in Megan's eyes when the truth peeled through her defensiveness. The way she clung to the railing as though the house itself might tilt beneath her. The way her voice cracked when she admitted the things she'd been hiding even from herself. Being the person someone projects their insecurity onto is a strange ache. It's not anger. It's not guilt. It's a quiet sorrow at realizing your presence can bruise someone who never meant to bleed. A breeze swept through the park, rustling the leaves overhead. One of them drifted down, landing near my shoe. I nudged it with my toe, the dry edge scraping lightly against the pavement. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. I frowned and opened it. This is Tyler. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. The message stark against the dimming light. I didn't reply. Another came through seconds later. She's making this into something it's not. I think you should hear my side. My jaw tightened. Not from anger, just recognition. The familiarity of someone dodging accountability with the same tired pattern. I deleted both messages without responding. Some stories aren't mine to rewrite, and some men aren't worth the breath it takes to correct them. I stood, brushing a bit of dust from the back of my jeans, and walked toward home. The cool evening air followed me, lifting a few strands of hair away from my face. Tonight, I wasn't carrying anyone's weight, but my own. The street ahead stretched quiet and open, and for the first time since yesterday, I felt something close to peace. When I turned the corner toward my building, the porch light above my door flicked on automatically, washing the steps in a soft gold that felt warmer than it should have. I climbed the stairs slowly, letting the day finally settle across my shoulders. Before I reached the top, I saw something leaning against the door, a small paper bag neatly folded at the top. My first reaction was caution, then curiosity. I picked it up and carried it inside, locking the door behind me. The apartment was dark except for the glow from the hallway street lamp filtering through the blinds. I flipped on the kitchen light, set the bag on the counter, and opened it. Inside was a small note, folded twice, and beneath it a tiny box of chamomile tea. My breath caught. I opened the note carefully. I know I hurt you. I'm not asking for anything tonight. Just wanted you to have something calming. M. No explanations this time. No defensiveness. No spiral of insecurity trying to pull me down with her. Just a quiet gesture from someone trying, in the simplest way she knew how. I rested my hands on the counter, letting the weight of that sink in. It didn't erase the night. It didn't fix the cracks. But it softened them, the way warm water softens something brittle before it breaks. I boiled water for tea, watching the steam curl from the kettle. When I poured it over the bag, the scent rose quickly, light, floral, gentle. I cupped the mug with both hands and took it to the couch, curling my legs beneath me. The silence felt different tonight. Not heavy, Not aching, just still. As I sipped the tea, I realized that the softest part of healing had already begun. Not the kind that repairs a friendship immediately, but the kind that loosens the grip of hurt so the rest can follow. Megan was trying, and I felt myself soften, not in surrender, but in understanding. People break in complicated ways, and sometimes the apology isn't grand. Sometimes it's just a quiet offering on a doorstep, hoping you'll accept it without needing anything more. I pulled the blanket over my shoulders and let the steam warm my face. Whatever tomorrow held, distance, rebuilding, or something in between, I knew I didn't regret setting boundaries. And I didn't regret having compassion either. Both could exist at the same time. Both were mine to choose. Tonight, I chose gentleness. For her. For myself. And for the first time in 2 days, the night didn't feel like a weight pressing down. It felt like a place to rest. The next morning opened slow and gray, clouds stretching thin across the sky like someone had pulled a soft blanket over the sun. I made myself another cup of tea, chamomile this time, and let its warmth settle inside me as I moved through the apartment. The light through the windows was muted, quiet, the kind of morning that asks you to move gently. I sat at the table with my mug cupped between my palms, thinking of the note Megan left at my door. Not the words themselves, but the way they were written. Careful, steady, without the frantic defensiveness that had colored her voice the night before. It felt like the first true step she'd taken in a long time. My phone buzzed. A message from her. I won't ask you to meet today. I just want you to know I'm taking space, too. I think we both need it. I breathed out slowly. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or both. I typed a short reply. I agree. Space is good. No embellishments, no reassurances, just the truth. I spent the late morning cleaning the apartment, wiping counters, folding laundry, opening windows to let the cool air drift through, simple things that gave the day a rhythm. When I reached the drawer where I'd placed the swimsuit, I paused. My hand hovered for a moment over the wood, then slid it open. There it was, folded neatly, not threatening, not symbolic, just fabric. I closed the drawer again. The sound of it clicking shut felt like a soft, final punctuation mark. Around noon, I stepped outside and took a walk through the neighborhood. The air smelled faintly of rain that hadn't arrived yet, and the trees swayed in a slow, restless way. Passing the houses, I thought about how many friendships had stories hidden behind closed doors, stories of miscommunication, insecurity, forgiveness, distance, stories like ours. People grow unevenly, sometimes in parallel, sometimes apart, sometimes toward each other again. As I reached the corner, a single raindrop landed on my arm, cold and certain. Then another. I lifted my face toward the sky just as the rain began to fall. Not heavy, just enough to speckle the sidewalk in dark, widening circles. I stood there for a moment, letting the cool droplets touch my skin. Then I turned and walked back home, unhurried, the quiet patter accompanying me the whole way. When I reached the steps of my building, I paused and looked back down the street, the same one I'd walked last night, heavy with tension and hurt. It felt different now. Not because the story had been wrapped neatly, but because the weight wasn't mine anymore. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just getting through one day then another, with a little more steadiness each time. I went inside, wiped the rain from my arms, and let the soft warmth of the apartment welcome me in. The door clicked shut behind me, and I felt a quiet exhale rise from somewhere deep inside. Not closure, but peace. A gentler kind of ending. A few days passed before the quiet shifted again. Not with a message, not with an apology, just with the simple feeling that the air around me had settled into something steadier. I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. Nothing special, just sautéing vegetables while a pot simmered on the stove, when my phone buzzed on the counter. Megan. Not a text, a call. The name lit up the screen with a kind of weight that made my fingers still over the cutting board. For a moment, I just watched it vibrate, waiting to see if the moment itself would decide for me. But the call kept going, and something inside me softened enough to answer. "Hey," I said quietly. She didn't speak at first, just breathed, a little uneven, a little too fast. "Thank you," she finally whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For not hating me." Her voice cracked on the last word, and the simplicity of it hit deeper than anything she'd said that night. "I don't hate you," I said. "I never did." There was a pause, small and fragile. "I told him we need space," she said. "Real space. I'm staying at my sister's for a while." I leaned against the counter, letting that sink in, not because I wanted her to leave him. That was never mine to want, but because it was the first concrete step she'd taken that wasn't fueled by panic or jealousy. "That's a hard decision," I said. "It was harder staying," she answered. The line went quiet again except for her breathing. I heard faint sounds behind her, traffic maybe, or just wind moving through trees, life continuing around her while she tried to find solid ground. "I'm sorry for dragging you into my mess," she said. "I know you didn't ask for any of it." "No one asks for nights like that," I said softly. She let out a shaky exhale. "I'm trying to work on myself, on the parts of me that twist things, that turn everything into a comparison I can't win." "You're not alone in that," I said. "Everyone has parts they're learning to outgrow." Her voice softened. "Thank you for answering. Thank you for calling." Another pause, this one lighter. "I'll let you go," she said. "I just wanted you to hear my voice when I said I'm sorry, not read it." "That means something," I said. "It means everything to me," she whispered. The call ended gently. No abruptness, no tension, just closure taking its first breath. I stood there for a long moment, the scent of garlic and rosemary warming the air around me. The pot on the stove bubbled softly. The world felt ordinary again, and that ordinary felt like a blessing. I went back to slicing vegetables, my movement slower, more deliberate. The knife clicked against the board in a steady rhythm. Through the window, the last of the daylight washed the buildings in a pale gold, soft and forgiving. Some friendships don't mend in dramatic sweeps. They mend in small truths, spoken quietly, in honest pauses, in the courage to call instead of hide. Tonight something began to knit back together, not the same as before, not unbroken, but real. And sometimes that's enough. A week later, the air felt lighter than it had in a long time. Not because anything magical happened, but because the heaviness had finally found somewhere else to rest. I was folding laundry in the living room, warm clothes fresh from the dryer, soft cotton brushing against my hands, when a gentle knock sounded at the door. Not urgent, not cautious, just hopeful. I hesitated before opening it. Megan stood on the other side, hands tucked into the sleeves of an oversized sweater, hair pulled back in a loose knot. She looked tired, but not the brittle tired from that night. This was a steadier kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from finally telling the truth to yourself and sitting with the discomfort long enough to grow from it. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She offered a small smile. Not forced, not apologetic, just quiet and real. "I won't stay long," she said. "I just wanted to see you, in person, one last time before I give you space for good." Something in my chest tightened, not out of loss, but out of the weight of what she'd just accepted. "You don't have to disappear," I said. "I do," she replied softly. "Not forever, but for now, I need to untangle myself, I guess, from the parts of me that made everything that night feel like a threat." I stepped aside, letting her in. She walked slowly, eyes drifting around the apartment the way people do when they're saying goodbye to a place that was once familiar. She sat on the edge of the couch, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. "You were never the problem," she said. "I need you to hear that from me. Not from guilt, from clarity." I sat across from her. "I know." Her eyes softened. "I'm working on the jealousy, the comparison, the pretending, all of it. It's going to take time." "It always does," I said. She laughed under her breath, a small, honest sound. "I kept thinking you were the reflection I hated. Turns out I was just afraid to look at myself." I didn't respond. Some truths don't need confirmation. She reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. "This isn't dramatic," she said. "Just something I wrote, for closure, for both of us. You don't have to open it now." I took it gently. The paper was soft at the edges, like she'd held it a while before, deciding to give it to me. She stood to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. "You were a good friend to me," she said, "even when I wasn't one to you." Her voice didn't shake this time. I nodded. "Take care of yourself, Megan." She took a breath, steady and full. "I will." Then she stepped into the hallway and walked away, her footsteps light, fading slowly until the building settled into silence again. I closed the door behind her and held the envelope in my hands. I didn't open it yet. I stayed there for a moment, forehead resting against the wood, letting the last echoes of her presence fade into stillness. Some relationships don't end in anger or betrayal. Some end in a quiet understanding. That distance is the kindest thing you can offer each other. I turned back into the living room, the soft evening light spilling across the carpet. Peace doesn't always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it's just one gentle step at a time. I set the envelope on the coffee table and sat beside it for a long moment, my fingers resting lightly on the edge. The paper was warm from my hands, but I didn't open it yet. Some closures deserve a breath before they're spoken into the world. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. A slow breeze slipped through the open window, lifting the corner of one of the throw pillows and brushing against the envelope like a gentle nudge. I finally picked it up and unfolded the flap. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, written in her small, careful handwriting. Caroline. I've spent years measuring myself against people who were never competing with me. I didn't realize how heavy that was until the night everything cracked. I don't blame you. I never should have. This isn't about you wearing something I meant as a joke. It's about me handing you the weight of my insecurities and expecting you to carry what wasn't yours. Thank you for seeing the truth even when I didn't want to. Thank you for being gentle even when I wasn't. I'm stepping back because I need to grow without leaning on you or resenting you. Please know I'm grateful for you, not angry. M. I folded the letter slowly, smoothing the crease with my thumb. There was no bitterness in her words, no excuses, just clarity, the kind that comes only after sitting with your own reflection long enough to see where the cracks actually are. I placed the letter back in the envelope and tucked it in the drawer beside the couch. Not hidden, not displayed, just kept. Afterward, I stepped out onto the balcony. The sky had shifted into a deep lavender, streaked with thin clouds glowing faintly in the last stretch of daylight. A few porch lights flickered on down the street. Somewhere, a radio played a soft old song, barely audible, but comforting in its simplicity. I wrapped my arms around myself and breathed in the cool air. Megan and I might find our way back to each other one day, or we might not. But tonight, the uncertainty didn't scare me. It felt like the natural shape of things. People changing, growing, drifting, returning if and when life allows. Some friendships aren't meant to stay constant. Some arrive to teach us something tender, then settle into the background of our lives like a gentle echo. And some goodbyes aren't endings at all, just soft redirections. I stayed on the balcony until the sky deepened into blue and the first evening star blinked into view. The city hummed quietly below, steady and indifferent, reminding me that life keeps moving no matter how much we spill inside it. I turned back toward the warm glow of my apartment and stepped inside, closing the sliding door behind me. The evening folded around me like a softer version of the person I had been the night everything cracked. And in that stillness, I felt something settle. Not a conclusion, but a calm acceptance of what had been and what would be next. The next morning, the light felt different, softer, as if the world itself had decided to approach gently. I moved through the apartment unhurried, opening blinds one by one, letting the quiet day settle into every corner of the rooms I knew by heart. When I reached the living room, the drawer beside the couch caught my eye, the one holding the letter. I didn't open it again, I didn't need to. Some words rest better once they've been spoken. I made tea, the same chamomile Megan had left at my door, and carried the mug to the balcony. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp pavement and newly cut grass from somewhere down the block. I leaned on the railing, watching the slow sprawl of the neighborhood waking up, someone jogging, another person walking a dog, a woman watering her plants on the opposite balcony. Ordinary scenes that felt steadier than anything from that night. For the first time in a while, my chest felt light. My phone buzzed on the table behind me. A message from Jenna. "Pancakes at the cafe today?" My treat. I smiled. "Give me 10 minutes," I typed back. Before leaving, I stood in front of the mirror by the door. A simple glance, nothing searching or self-critical, just recognizing myself without the weight of someone else's insecurity pressed against my reflection. I grabbed my bag, slipped on my shoes, and stepped outside. The breeze lifted my hair as I walked down the stairs, brushing across my face like a quiet reassurance. When I reached the corner, I paused and looked back toward the direction of Megan's neighborhood. No longing, no ache, just a gentle acknowledgement of what had been and what no longer needed to be carried. Some endings aren't ruptures, some are releases. I crossed the street, heading toward the cafe where Jenna would be waiting, warm laughter already woven into the morning I was walking toward. The sun edged higher, thinning the last traces of gray from the sky. Today held no heaviness, no tension, no echo of that night, just space, open, clean, mine. And as I reached the cafe door, I felt the truth settle softly inside me. Not every fracture needs repair. Some heal by letting go, some by stepping forward, some by choosing peace over proof. The bell above the cafe chimed as I pushed the door open, the warm smell of coffee and sugar greeting me like a familiar embrace. And with that small sound, the story finally closed, not with a sharp end, but with a quiet, steady breath. If you've ever been spoken to this way, you can share your experience.